Good evening. It is not actually often that I get to inflict myself on an audience more than once in a day, so I will take great relish this evening. I may be a little too coy by half when I say I had a slight political upbringing. And I apologize to bring that in here a little bit in our conversation tonight, but I think it will become self-evident as to why. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the master class of political advertising that was the Bear in the Woods commercial from Ronald Reagan. I think many of you would say an apt metaphor today would be there's a tiger in the woods. I would say something just slightly different, that there is a narrative being spun. The narrative that democracy is on the wane. The narrative that it is the might of strong men that creates security. The narrative that the right to vote or to express yourself freely sows the seeds of discord. Now, I don't actually think that anybody sitting in the room at the Halifax International Security Forum agrees with that sentiment, but I can promise you it is an ideology that is on the march. And to combat that ideology, we must have leaders of character. And character is a tricky thing. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with the phrase, as a descriptor for character, that it is doing the right thing when no one is looking. I hate that definition. Because if the 21st century has proven anything to us, it is that it is often most difficult to do the right thing when everyone is looking. No. Character is doing the right thing by virtue of the fact it is the right thing to do whether everyone or no one is watching. And President Tsai is the perfect embodiment of that sentiment. The accomplishment of being Taiwan's 7th president in a democracy would be reason enough alone to heap praise upon her, much less the fact that she's the first woman to hold that office. The fact that she tackled... There will be more of those, don't worry. The fact that she tackled some of the most challenging internal problems in Taiwan head-on would be enough for praise. The fact that she revivified Taiwanese diplomacy in the world would be enough reason to heap praise upon her. But that is not why she is here today. She is here because in a world where authoritarians are emboldened, she stood firm under withering pressure. She personified the democratic spirit in a region where it is literally dangerous to do so. In a world of equivocation, she was the avatar of character when everyone and no one was watching. In a time of timidity, she stood as the embodiment of bravery, breaking the authoritarian narrative. In true John McCain fashion, she fought for a cause greater than her self-interest and elevated the cause of humanity in Taiwan. Most importantly, she has inspired a new generation of Taiwanese to invigorate the beating heart of freedom in the shadow of oppression, and has stood in the face of others that would rob those of their human dignity. So before she comes up, I will leave you with President Tsai in her own words. Democracy is not an election. It is our daily life. President Tsai, thank you for being here in person. Thank you for giving me the honor of presenting you this award. And thank you for setting such a mighty example for all of us to follow. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Please be seated. Mr. McCain, you just gave a speech. I'm sure it's much better than the speech that I'm going to give. So don't be disappointed at my speech later. The best one has been delivered. It is with great pleasure that I join you all at the 16th Annual Halifax International Security Forum this year. Let me begin by thanking Mr. Jack McCain for presenting me with John McCain Prize. As I said, he already has delivered a wonderful speech, primarily about me. I am honored to receive this award for your late father, who I deeply admire for his principled and determined commitment to freedom and democracy. I also would like to thank Halifax International Security Forum President Peter Van Praag for the invitation to take part in this year's forum. I had a conversation with him just now. My sense is he seems to be more nervous than I. For more than 15 years, this forum has brought together distinguished experts and officials to discuss the more pressing global issues. This forum also offers a very necessary platform for democracies and their leaders to strategize on how to better collaborate and support one another to prepare for the future. So I am grateful to be among you all at this critical time and to take part in this important discussion. We're now at one of the most consequential times in history. At this moment, democracies and rule-based world order are facing some of their greatest challenges. And one of these challenges is adapting to the fast-changing global landscape. We overcame the COVID-19 pandemic, but this epidemic brought fundamental changes to the world. Changes in how we communicate and even the way we work and have meetings. It also caused a serious economic downturn. Factories, manufacturers, and the service and travel industry were greatly affected, and some are still in recovery. We're also experiencing what experts call the super year of elections. Half of the world's population in 72 countries have been going to the polls to elect their leaders. Military intimidation, information manipulation, and cognitive warfare, Taiwan jump-started this year with its national election. And we just witnessed a very competitive election in the United States. As a result, many democracies experienced changes in their governments and the composition of their parliaments. This means democracies also have to tackle the uncertainties and challenges that emerge after such changes. And that requires wisdom from their leadership, time, and effort. In contrast, authoritarian regimes are able to maintain consistency in their leadership due to their undemocratic nature. As they become stronger and more confident, they are even colluding in the pursuit of their self-interested agenda, influencing the domestic politics in democracies. This is the global environment we are in. Externally, democracies have to deal with authoritarian regimes' increasing aggressive stand. Domestically, we're also facing challenges such as inflation, unemployment, and economic downturns. As domestic issues keep democracies preoccupied, they also make working together harder. yet more important than ever. This has been the challenge for all of us as democracies in our effort to achieve victory in Ukraine. Democracies have been working together to help Ukraine defend against Russia's full-scale invasion since February 2022. With domestic political changes and economic pressure, some democracies may have second thoughts or become more willing to compromise. But I'm sure we can all agree that authoritarian aggression should not be encouraged. A strong democratic front is required to deter authoritarians from threatening our security and our democratic way of life. So I hope that our discussion here in Halifax can help facilitate a more unified and effective approach to safeguarding democracies globally. Supporting Ukraine is about more than standing up for our democratic values. The impact of Russia's invasion on economies and societies around the world has been devastating. Resultant supply chain disruptions and inflation have taken a toll on the well-being of people everywhere, even in countries thousands of miles away from the conflict. Therefore, effective deterrence against authoritarian expansionism is fundamental to safeguarding our democracies and maintaining international order. That is why our continued support for Ukraine remains imperative, as a Ukrainian victory will serve as the most effective deterrence against future aggression. This will also signal that intimidation and the use of force against any members of our democratic community would result in serious consequences. The Ukrainian case awoke democracies to the fact that our adversaries have no reservation about boosting their military arsenals. And they have been relentless in exerting ever greater pressure on us, including through the increasing use of gray zone activities. Therefore, having a strong national defense against authoritarian imposition is not only essential, but urgent. This requires democracies to enhance their own defense capabilities across the board. Taiwan, for example, has continued to increase defense investment over the past 8 years. Our defense budget has risen by over 80%, at a rate of nearly 8% each year. I want to emphasize that this is well above our average GDP growth of 3.74% over this period, which is 2018 to 2016 to 2023. This also represents a historically high level of investment for Taiwan and the most organized and systemic defense investments we have conducted. And we will certainly continue to increase investment as required by our security needs. In addition to investment in traditional platforms such as combat aircraft, Taiwan has made hefty investment in asymmetric capabilities, including missiles, especially mobile land-based anti-ship cruise missiles. The investment also extends to our troops, who have been receiving improved combat training and equipment to enhance their battlefield awareness as well as command and control. This is particularly important as it significantly strengthens Taiwan's sea-air combat capabilities and increases the efficiency of joint operation. We also learned from the experiences of our friends in Europe and launched the All-Out Defense Mobilization Agency to reform our reserve force training and enhance whole-of-society defense resilience. Initiatives as such maximize Taiwan's self-reliance in defense and societal resilience. And more importantly, they mean that we are willing to bear our share of burden and do not take our security partners' support for granted. Authoritarian regimes' aggression is not limited to military action. In this era of advanced technology, each and every democracy has to contend with FIMI, that is, foreign information manipulations and interference, as well as cognitive warfare. Through these means, external forces take advantage of the free and open information environments in democratic countries, using social media platforms to spread false and misleading information that threatens our democratic foundation. Their actions are designed to drive a wedge between fellow citizens, between societies and governments, and even between countries. This increases the risk of misunderstandings, which chip away at the trust we have in one another. And most worryingly, it can help authoritarians achieve their ultimate goal by causing people to lose faith in democracy. Taiwan stands on the front line of this unconventional aggression. To manage the risk of cognitive warfare, we are enhancing government strategic communications and information resilience across our society. However, with the rise of AI technology, cognitive warfare is becoming less restricted by language or national borders. It is now easier than ever to infiltrate society through information campaigns that can have dire consequences. Throughout this global year of election, democracies have faced cognitive interference campaigns with increasingly harmful consequences. To enhance domestic resilience, democracies must engage diverse stakeholders, including the business community, local governments, civil society, and the media. It is through collaboration and information sharing that we can build a fortress against authoritarian intrusion. More broadly, the global nature of this threat means that the best way to address it is through close cooperation between like-minded countries. I believe that if we all come together, our collective response will make our democratic system even stronger and more appealing, while overcoming authoritarians' attempt to expand their influences. To conclude, I want to stress that in such an international world facing so much uncertainty, it is important to foster international cooperation in conflict resolution, as well as addressing potential future conflicts. To accomplish this, we need more cooperation among democracies, and we need to be more unified than authoritarians. Here, I want to thank those in the international community who have voiced the support for peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. From the G7 to EU, as reflected in the numerous statements by leaders at important gatherings, the international democratic community has been unanimous in its stand that peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait are indispensable to global security and prosperity. In the last 4 years alone, there have been dozens of statements to this effect. This goes to show that there is a broad consensus on the need to ensure peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait and to support freedom and democracy globally. This is the kind of unity that is so important in our effort to deter threats to our security and democracy. Moreover, freedom of navigation operations in the Taiwan Strait conducted by major countries, that of course including Canada, are particularly important not only for Taiwan's security, but also for international sea traffic and commerce. We're grateful to all our international partners who are paying close attention to security in our region and working collectively to ensure its stability. For more than half a century, Taiwan has faced constant challenges from the Chinese Communist regime. However, decades of intimidation and dealing with the changing international environment have made Taiwan's society and its leaders resilient and pragmatic. As we have been making efforts to strengthen our defense and domestic resilience, we understand that it is equally important for us to work with the stakeholders in the region to find ways to reduce differences and hopefully to develop a long-term stabilizing mechanism. Taiwan looks forward to being joined by those who share the same desire and value in this important endeavor. And I am so pleased that the Halifax International Security Forum is planning to hold its first event in Taiwan next February. Peter, I have no intention to make the announcement for you, but it's just so related to my speech. I want to take this opportunity to invite you all to Taiwan to experience our vibrant democracy. I hope you can come to witness our beautiful scenery, enjoy our culture, and most importantly, to meet our wonderful people who are so determined and work so hard to protect our hard-earned democracy. So, see you in Taiwan in a few months' time. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, please.
You are among friends, I think, Dr. Tsai, and thank you so much for your words. And thank you, Jack, for that wonderful introduction, and thank you for being here and accepting this award. My name is Nick Schifrin. I'm the Foreign Affairs Correspondent for PBS NewsHour based in Washington. What I'm going to try and do tonight is go for about 20 minutes or so. We're going to start big picture. We're going to ask you about the overall assessment of the region, of China and Taiwan. We're going to get into some details about weapons and the president-elect, and then we'll zoom out again, and you can deliver the message on democracy that you are here being awarded for. So let's start with that overall zoomed-out picture. How do you assess the threat of China's increasing aggressiveness and coerciveness, and what timeline do you believe Xi Jinping is on?
The timelines have been has been an issue that is widely discussed among experts and governments. We have all sorts of timelines. The shortest one, the most recent one, will probably be 2027, and nobody would guarantee that there will be something that happened by then. But there are others who may have a longer time frame for the possible happening of a conflict. But we can, as leaders, we just cannot guess, and we have to get ourselves prepared. So when we're facing with issues like this, we're using several timelines to make our preparation in stages. So this is what we're doing now, and we try to be as best prepared as possible.
So we'll talk about Taiwan preparations, we'll talk about American preparations, but I think it's also important to ask, when we're thinking about this overall assessment, this wide-angle lens right now, for you to explain how has the Taiwanese population shifted since Hong Kong and Ukraine?
Well, I think the Hong Kong situation, especially in the year, it was 2019, the event there has reminded the Taiwanese that, we just cannot be too optimistic about people that may have an intention to take over Taiwan. So, the Ukrainian case is another one, and it's another reminder to the Taiwanese people that we should get ourselves prepared if we think that our democracy and freedom are something that we need to do things to protect. So I think, unfortunately or fortunately, the happening of these two events serves as a tiny reminder to the Taiwanese people that democracy of ours requires a lot of efforts by the society and people as a whole.
So I think that's a great wide-angle lens view of the situation. Let's go zoom in, and let's start with Ukraine. You talked tonight, you've said repeatedly that the U.S. must support Ukraine until the very end. If the next Trump administration were to stop supporting Ukraine, and or if Ukraine were forced to accept some kind of peace in which it had to give up territory, what would be the impact in Beijing and Taipei?
As I said in my speech just now, essentially I'm trying to say is authoritarians should not be encouraged. They should be deterred. So I hope in the future, when we're looking for resolution of the current conflict in Ukraine, I hope people will bear in mind that democracy and freedom and sovereignty of the Ukrainian people should be respected. Any proposal for resolution has to be agreed by the Ukrainian people. And I hope that now, when you say the U.S. has to continue to support the Ukrainians, in my speech I actually said that the whole community of democracy should get together to generate the best support that we can have for Ukraine. So they will be encouraged, and they will be having more confidence in themselves and also their friends around the world. And they will be more determined and brave. This is the kind of Ukrainian we like to see. And I hope that apparently they're facing a very difficult situation. But I hope that they don't lose their determination and confidence.
I don't think anyone's doubting Ukraine's determination. I guess, how do you think Beijing would respond if the world, Washington, the West, did drop some of its support for Ukraine?
Of course, people would argue that this was, if too much compromise is made in the case of Ukraine, I'm sure people would tend to think that the potential aggressors would be encouraged. So that is why I said in my speech just now, a victory in Ukraine would serve as the best deterrence for possible future conflicts.
Admiral Paparo, who has been here at this conference, said this week something that the United States has not said in the past. He acknowledged that the Patriots, the air-to-air missiles that are being sent to Ukraine, some of which actually are being used in Israel as well, the fact that those are going to Ukraine are, quote, eating into stocks. It imposes costs on the readiness of America to respond in the Indo-Pacific. Do you fear at all that the defense of Taiwan is being disadvantaged by U.S. efforts in Ukraine and the Middle East?
Well, the U.S. May have this issue of whether they have enough in stock. But my thought is that they should do whatever they can to help the Ukrainian. We still have time to prepare for ourselves with the rest of the world.
So it's important that the United States continue these weapons to Ukraine, even if, as Admiral Paparo admitted, there might be a little less readiness.
As I said, we still have time. We still have time to get ourselves better prepared, of course, with the help of our friends.
You raised gray zone maneuvers by Beijing, and I wonder if you could tell the audience, are you more worried about a Chinese invasion or a Chinese blockade?
These are all possibilities and the assumptions that we have to make when we're making preparations.
Well, I ask because much of deterring Beijing, as you have talked about extensively, is about imposing costs or convincing them that they would face costs regardless of what choice of the two that they make. What do you believe is the level of pain that Beijing couldn't tolerate?
You mean in terms of cost?
Yeah.
Well, I think Beijing has its own calculation of cost. And when we are talking about costs, you have monetary costs, you have political costs, you have all sorts of costs. Now, in the minds of the politicians, the calculation is always a very complicated one. And it's not only in financial terms. There are other things like political costs and others to consider. And they may have different priorities.
You're using plural. I think the focus would be on one man, Xi Jinping, and his assessment of cost. Do you care to share your assessment on what he might consider too costly?
Well, I think Xi Jinping has a very complicated and challenging agenda himself. So my advice is that he probably will spend more time on his domestic challenges first.
We, in terms of imposing costs, of course, one of them is military and readiness of both the United States and Taiwan. So let's talk about Taiwan's readiness. You talked about the 80% increase in the defense budget, 8% each year, big ticket items, but crucially, from Taiwan's perspective and Washington's perspective, asymmetric capabilities. Can you tell us whether Taiwan plans a big purchase of weapons in the near future, Patriots, Stingers, perhaps even F-35s, and do you think Taiwan will or should wait until the inauguration to make that purchase?
Until the inauguration?
Until Donald Trump becomes president again.
I sort of responded to your question in my speech. I said we will continue our investment, continue to invest in our defense as required by our security needs.
Yes.
So that means that you do need to have a constant assessment of what your security needs are. And then you make a decision as to what sort of weaponry, to what extent, and what sort of volumes that you need to purchase. And what is most important is that whether you would find someone who is so willingly to provide that weaponry to you. And in the case of Taiwan, we seem to be a very sensitive buyer, and some people may have some hesitation or have to think twice before they agree to sell those weaponries. And the United States seems to be a more generous one. Again, we do have money to spend, but we have to spend the money wisely. So it's a continuing assessment with our security partners as to what is needed. And then we will, try to get ourselves equipped with these things that we need to defend ourselves. Monetary costs, given the situation of Taiwan, I think we probably can afford it.
You can afford a big purchase.
Not necessarily big, I mean necessary purchases.
President-elect Trump has said quite a few things about Taiwan. I won't repeat all of them because I want to focus on one substantive one that he said to the Washington Post. He said Taiwan needed to boost GDP spending on defense to 10%. Do you think Taiwan should, and can it?
Well, if our security assessment tells us that we have to increase, then we will increase. But we would have some difficulty of accepting an arbitrary figure.
Is there there's a lot of obvious follow-ups there, but
I'm not
is there a figure that
this
you
is
think
an arbitrary figure? I'm not hinting that. It has to be backed by a very careful calculation of what we need.
And do you think there is that calculation in terms of a number? I mean, is there?
We haven't done a careful calculation yet.
Let me ask about a trend that we see from the United States across the Trump and Biden administrations. Unprecedented steps to support Taiwan. Some of them private, but others in public. And I wonder if you believe there should be any limits on how much support the U.S. shows publicly in order to avoid a response from Beijing. Is there a point where essentially American love, public American love, might become dangerous or excessive?
Given the experiences we have so far, the kind of responses that you mentioned, many of the time is always carefully contemplated, and many of the time there's consultation before it is released. So the kind of worries that you mentioned, I have to admit is a worry, but you don't have to worry too much because between friends and partners, there are always consultations before a position is announced or made public.
So it sounds like what you're saying is there could be worries about it, but so long as Washington and Taipei coordinate, you're not worried. Okay.
Yeah, and this has been the practice.
I'm running out of time here, so just two quick last ones. There's a conventional wisdom that a slowdown in China's economy is a good thing when it comes to Taiwan's security, because it likely delays any military action against Taiwan. But do you agree with that?
Well, this is one of the possibilities, but you can't make decision only rely on one possibility. You have to prepare for other possibilities as well.
Meaning it actually might be the opposite. That a downturn in China could actually accelerate it.
Yes, a leader has to prepare all the contingencies and make plans to deal with all sorts of possibilities.
And I guess I'll let you leave us before I turn to just a couple questions.
You promise that you're not going to grill me.
This
you
is
are
not a
actually
grilling.
grilling me.
I won't say anything. There have been grillings in this chair, and I hope this is not seen as a grilling. Lastly, look, you're being rewarded for your efforts for democracy. You've fought efforts inside Taiwan, domestically and internationally, to try and damage Taiwanese democracy. Your message tonight is that democracies need to be more unified than authoritarians. Bottom line, do you have faith that that can happen?
Well, things will not happen without making any efforts. It's the efforts that count. And I'm saying that just to remind the democracies, they got work to do. And it's a very necessary work to do.
Great.